And I will welcome everyone here to our workshop today with Gwen Franco. And I will, rather than introduce Gwen, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a couple of the student entrepreneurs, interns who have been working with us at the Rec Innovation Lab and planning the workshops. And the workshop today was planned by Ryan Merricken and Jason Law, and then Jason is actually going to be introducing our guest speaker, Gwen. So I'll pass it on to Jason to give us a little bit of an overview of who's going to be speaking with us today.
Cool. Hey guys. So yeah, my name's Jason Law. I'm a marketing intern at the Rec Innovation Lab. And today we have Gwen. She's the manager at the Hyatt corporate office on the global talent management team. Thanks for being with us today, Gwen.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here to return once again to deliver another workshop with this community that is so great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can go ahead and get started. Can everyone see my screen? Are we good?
Yes, it looks great.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I am going to talk about a topic that is really important for your entrepreneurial journey. I have done another workshop where I started the introduction of emotional intelligence, and I've broken it down to 4 different workshops. And so today we're on our second part, and this one is around self-regulating your emotions. I'm really excited to share this content with you and help you understand how this is going to help you as founders or co-founders, whatever it may be, and ultimately building a great company, but building yourself as a really successful and great leader. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. So I am an entrepreneur. I'm a talent management professional. I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, and I'm an HR manager. My brand is Craft Leadership that I created as an internal brand within Hyatt Corporation. I started at Hyatt as my first adult job as an HR coordinator. 13 years later, I'm a manager at the Hyatt corporate office on the global talent management team. This is a new role. I was just promoted into this role last week. So very, very excited to be working now, and I will be creating talent management solutions globally. So, so excited to look at my job from that perspective. I created Craft Leadership in October of 2017, and that's how I became an entrepreneur, and I launched my own brand and podcast within Hyatt, which really is what triggered and activated my entrepreneurial spirit. So my business has been forthcoming for some time now, and there's always something kind of delayed in it, and I did start and launch my coaching business, but now with a new role, there's a little pause on that. And some of the work that I do with the Rec Center is I lead workshops around leadership, soft skill development, emotional intelligence, confidence building, and I've mentored TechMate, Solidel, and Reinforce are 3 of the companies that I have helped mentor through the Rec Center. And I support when it comes to talking about your culture, talking about anything with onboarding, organizational development, your training, performance management, recruitment, coaching, all of those things, anything like that. That is what I support in my mentoring work. So love the opportunity to help entrepreneurs grow and become exceptional leaders so they can grow and build great companies. All right, let's talk a little bit about what you can expect in today's session. So today's session, I'm going to just go back a little bit to what emotional intelligence is and why it's important for you. How does it all connect together? How does your emotional intelligence connect to your ability to be an entrepreneur, to your entrepreneurial identity? Explore the importance of self-regulation, and we're going to do a couple exercises, and I'm going to show you a few tips to practice self-regulation. All right, what is emotional intelligence? So emotional intelligence is really the ability to understand and to manage your emotions, right? And not just your emotions, but those around you. So people who have really high degrees of emotional intelligence know what you're feeling, why you're feeling that, you're able to control it, and also understand how your emotions affect those around you. So that's really, really powerful, especially when you think of such an emotional time of when you're building and starting a business, right? And what happens when you're doing that is your business becomes you. That is who the identity, that is your identity. An entrepreneurial identity is you are the business. So in that, there's a lot of stress. There's a lot of emotions that are triggered. And sometimes we don't pay as much attention to understanding where these emotions are coming from and how we can better manage them. So what I really aim and passionate about is being much more proactive in your development.
What?
As a professional versus let's be reactive to where you're putting so much focus into the business right now. And then 5 years later is when you pay attention to your leadership development or that of people in your company. So
can I interrupt just for a second here?
Sure.
I just wanted to say, if you're anybody's coming in, just make sure to turn off your microphones. Sometimes they can get turned on, and we want to make sure that those are turned off. And yeah, and if you have questions, put them into the chat.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, perfect. And so we don't want to be we'd like to be much more proactive in the development versus being reactive. So in doing that, we want to be able to manage, our emotions, know how to handle them. And it's what's going to help you be successful, right? So what motivated you initially to be an entrepreneur was probably you were seeking out autonomy, purpose, flexibility, financial success, and some form of legacy. Those tend to be the common factors that motivate entrepreneurs to go into that, to found your companies or your cause, product, whatever it may be, right? So what are skills that are needed and able to be successful are self-confidence, trustworthiness, achievement orientation, change catalyst, teamwork, collaboration, curiosity, time management, strategic thinking, efficiency, and resilience, right? All of these skills, some of them are technical, but there's a lot of soft skills in there. And we do not invest as much time into the soft skill as we do to the technical part because we are so focused on the business. But those soft skill development is what's going to create the sustainability and longevity, a success of you continuing to be good at what you do and those around you, because you want to bring people along with you to enjoy and to be passionate about your work as well. These are the 4 areas of emotional intelligence. Self-awareness was the first one that we talked about and is the absolute foundation of when it comes to emotional intelligence. And it's your ability to perceive and understand your emotions and stay aware of them as they happen. It takes a lot of work, and from our first session, there is a recording. We do some exercises to start that work of understanding our emotions and understanding our triggers. I'll do a quick little recap in just a moment. Today, we're gonna focus on self-regulation, and then I have 2 upcoming workshops where I will focus on social awareness and relationship management. These 4, as you can see, the first 2 are about yourself, understanding yourself and how you behave. The other 2 are understanding others and their emotions and how you manage relationships. All right, when we talked about self-awareness, we talked about how when you are self-aware, you know how you feel and you know how your emotions and actions can affect others around you, right? So you are perceptive and intuitive to what you're feeling and why you're feeling. The other thing is, when we look here where it says status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness, those are triggers. Those tend to be triggers that cause you to feel certain ways. So from our first workshop, we did this exercise where we explored, okay, what triggers you? Think about a time when you were upset or frustrated or wherever it may be, because those are the emotions we're going to tend to focus on, because that's when we tend to lose control and not behave the way that we want to. So these were different points at which can cause someone to feel triggered and to feel that emotion. So what's important is to bring that awareness and understand, hey, I've noticed that, commonly when I get upset, it's because my status is being challenged, right? So maybe somebody is questioning they're asking, oh, do you really know that? And so in a way you feel like your status is being challenged. And so that is a trigger for you. And it's good to be aware and know which one is your trigger, so that from there you can then manage it. So that's just an example, but we did do a little bit more from the first workshop. So now that we have the background out of the way, let's talk about what self-regulation is. So self-regulation is really your ability to control certain impulses and moods, right? So it requires you first to understand your emotions through self-awareness, because in understanding that, then you can manage model. This is called the cognitive model. And I want to break down a little bit so we can see of how situations happen to us, right? How they happen externally and internally. So a situation happens outside of us. We have a thought that happens in our head about how something is interpreted. We then have a feeling that occurs as a result of this thought, and we behave in a certain way in response to that emotion. Now, I do want to say, you know, there's lots of different kinds of models, but for the sake of this conversation that we're having and to have a general understanding of what the internal process is for us, we will go with this model. So what we want to do is, when we get here to the step of emotion, we want to make sure that our behavior, it is, if it's responsive to the emotion, we want it to be in a good way. We don't want the emotion to take over. We are trying to learn how to control our emotions so that they don't take over us. And this is the part that we want to focus. We need to be aware so that we can then behave the way that we want to. When we regulate our emotions, when we practice self-regulation, skills that are impacted, right? This is what is a result, right, of practicing self-regulation: better communication, better conflict resolution. You have a more focused on perspective, problem solving, and time management. Now, if you recall, I had this up earlier. The ones that I had over here were the ones, were points that drive you to be an entrepreneur and why that's important to you. But I still left up here the skills that are needed to be successful, because I wanted you to see how, if you work on self-regulation, okay, so your communication is going to be better. So you need strong communication to build trustworthiness. You need good communication to build teamwork, collaboration. So I want you to see how, when you work on these skills lead to success that you need being an entrepreneur. So we can see other ones here: problem solving, time management. They show up in some way over here. So you are ultimately working on yourself. You are working towards the success of the business. All right, I want you
Gwen?
to think, oh, yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but you have a few questions in the chat for you.
Oh, I do. Oh, okay. All right, let me take a moment, and I have a couple here. Let's see. It says, how do you ensure that what you say is interpreted as you intended? What type of verbiage should you use? Hello, Jasmine. Thank you so much for asking that question. And I am going to address that question in a little bit, and let's address it right after this exercise. So I want everyone to think of the last time you felt frustrated. What triggered you? How did you behave? Was that how you wanted to react? How would you have liked to react? And what impact did your reaction have? So think of that for yourself. And I want you to think of it when you had a reaction, because sometimes you feel frustrated and then you don't have exactly a reaction, right? You manage it. But think of the last time you felt frustrated, and it could be something related to the current climate, everything that's going around. It could be something related to the business. But really sit with yourself for a moment and ask and understand that, because from this, then we can think I will share some tips on ways for us to better manage it and to also address Jasmine's question. So I'm just going to give everybody 2 minutes, sit and think about it. Now, I know we have, if you're still writing it down or reflecting, that's perfectly fine. If you would like to share in the chat what triggered you, or maybe any parts of the question, how would you have liked to have responded? What impacted your reaction? Any form of insight that you have found from the reflection, if you want to share it in the chat, you're absolutely welcome to. your Wi-Fi failing all of the time. Jacoby, that is a very, very good trigger. It is very, very frustrating. I think with that one also, there's no control, right? And there's no trust and consistency, and that's important to people, especially because it's our way of being connected and doing everything. It's through school, it's the work, it's so necessary. Your nephew being stubborn, Kiara, thank you for sharing. Enzo, other students not helping on a group project. Yes, yes, yes. Would anybody like to share about your reaction, and maybe if your reaction was the way that you would have liked, or maybe you didn't react? So you felt triggered when I feel like I'm being dismissed or unheard in a conversation. When it happens, I feel the need to defend, which affects my ability to stay open during the conversation. Yes. Okay. And that's really good that you are aware of that. A stranger made a rude comment, not being able to trust someone when says they will do something, right? So the more that we are able to, once again, practice self-awareness and know what these things are that are triggering us, and not just know what is triggering us, but also be able to feel it and identify it when it's happening in our bodies, then we'll be able to practice self-regulation and respond in ways that we want. Because I'm sure everyone has had an outburst of some sort. You've had some kind of an emotional one, whether that be anger, frustration, sadness, whatever it may be, right? And when you think about it in the work environment, how is that going to be effective? How is that going to help you in moving your business forward in having these emotional outbursts and such? How is that going to foster great values in your work environment with those people that you're working with and that you are reliant on in order to continue to move the business forward? So here's a couple ways that can help you in regulating. And Jasmine, I will get to your question about about your intention, right? So you, and these are super simple things that you can do. And one of them is just to master the pause. And when you master the pause, it's just pausing, because pausing gives you time to think before you act. So don't react immediately. And it's so difficult sometimes because it's such an emotional encounter that we're having. And we're almost blind to what the outcome could actually be because it's so emotional. So you want to just pause. And the greatest practice you can do is count to 5. Mel Robbins is someone who I very much follow and very much respect. And she says it's always do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when you count it, it's shifting from where you were thinking into another part of your brain that then allows you to be much more aware and not be so emotionally driven. So it can help calm you down. It can help you be much less reactive and more intentional about what it is that you want to do. So something as simple as pausing can help you regulate your emotions. The next thing is to really practice empathy. So you really want to think about what are the other person's motivations. Ask yourself, why is this person acting as they are? Know that you're likely not causing this other person's anger. If a person's lashing out at you, if they're yelling at you or whatever it may be, you're just receiving the effects of it, which doesn't necessarily make it right. But you have an opportunity here to take control of the situation and not continue what they are doing to you, which is just to be giving anger without a valid reason or to be projecting it onto something. So understand that everybody is going through something. And I know we talk about empathy so much and we talk about practicing that skill, and it's absolutely a skill. So that means you can become much more empathetic. You can increase your levels of empathy. So I want us to do a little exercise to see just how empathetic you really are. Because we have this concept and idea and think we're much more empathetic than we really are. So here's your scenario. You and your significant other are getting ready to go out to a party. Your significant other sent his or her favorite outfit to the dry cleaner recently to wear for this occasion. When he or she is about to put the outfit on, he or she realizes the dry cleaner has ruined their outfit. So I want you to think about, what would you say to your significant other in a response to this scenario, and I want you to write it in the chat, and I want you to write the most empathetic response you can possibly think of. What would you say? You look great in anything. Yes. Really? Question mark. Okay. Oh no. Do you want to go to the mall before the party to get something else? Guess you got to put something else on. Okay. Remember, our aim is to be very, very empathetic. Don't worry about it. People want you there for you, not your outfit. I'm so sorry you ruined your outfit, but I'm sure we can make something else work. That sucks. I'm so sorry that happened. I know that was your favorite blank. Let's look at what else you have. Oh no, got to find something else. I will handle it tomorrow with them. Let's enjoy tonight the best way we can. Let's go ahead and find, I would be furious for lack of planning. Honey, so sorry that happened, but you have great options at home. All right, okay. I understand this is a frustrated, is there an outfit? Okay, frustrating. I see some acknowledgement of emotions. All right, so I see some acknowledgement of emotions, which is great. And I'm going to talk to you about the 5 levels of empathy. And commonly, we live in 1 to 2. Okay, so dismissive, you're dismissive of the other person's reality, blaming, telling me, don't worry, it's not a big deal. You'll be fine. Not, yeah, really? We had that as one of the responses. So that is the lowest level of empathy because you are dismissing their reality and what's going on, right? Or you should have planned. Somebody said that they would be furious about lack of planning. You should have planned for this. That's all dismissive. Number 2 is solutions. So naturally, that's who we are. We're always trying to come up with solutions, right? And we still remain within our own frame of reference. So when we're saying, let's go to the mall, let's find you something else, we're still not practicing the highest level of empathy. So acknowledging is, how does that make you feel? That's level 3, showing that you acknowledge there was an emotional message within one's own frame of reference still, but you're at least acknowledging now that there's an emotion and wanting to address that. Number 4 is naming. I can imagine that makes you feel blank, putting words to that emotion, but we're still within our own frame. Number 5, context, is the highest level of empathy, and it's the level that we all think we practice. When we talk about empathy and being more empathetic, we think we practice 5, but in reality, very, very rarely do people ever practice level 5 of empathy. And you would respond with, I can imagine you feel frustrated given that tonight is an important night and you wanted to wear this tux that makes you feel incredibly handsome. So it's anything that shows that you can see how the incident and the corresponding emotion fits into the context of their life, because empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So you have to see it from their frame of reference. And that's the true practice of empathy. And this is so true with driving connection with people. This is in building trust. This is in building teamwork. This is right now us just working, living and trying to function in this world that we are. Everything that's going around is us to truly challenge ourselves to think from a level 5 of context when it comes to practicing empathy. And when we do that, we will be able to be much more patient and understanding and be able to manage our reactions to things, and then ultimately driving us to be able to connect better with others. Does anybody have any comments or questions around these levels of empathy? I need to respond to Jasmine's question, but let me go back up to it because I don't recall it. She said, how do you ensure that what you say is interpreted as you intended? What type of verbiage should you use? So I hope this helps a little bit in what you're saying, what your question is in terms of, I can imagine that you feel X given that Y. Jasmine, when practicing empathy, but if you want to unmute and explain to me a little bit more what it is that you're talking about, if there's another scenario when you would want to to use, like that you would want to ensure that your message is being communicated correctly and that they're understanding?
Sure. So you presented the process where a situation comes up and then the thought process of how the other person interprets it and then a reaction as a result. So from the other party who is delivering the message, how do you ensure that what you're saying is being interpreted as you intended? Because I don't want an emotional reaction from the other person. Let's say it was a critical response or a harsh critique.
So I would say, so like, let's say hypothetically in this scenario, just to give it a little more context, is you have to give somebody some feedback, right?
Right.
And maybe something that you know that they'll be defensive about. So my advice would be to always assume that you're going to get the worst possible reaction from somebody. And that is so that you are not caught off guard. And that is so that you are prepared and you can maintain control of the situation. Also in that, and we will talk about that in the next part of one of my next workshops, is you want to give feedback effectively. And so there's certain, like a structure, a script that you can follow when giving feedback to where it's behavior focused and you're focused on behavior and you're not focused on, let's say, attacking the person or giving feedback around where they feel like it's attacking them and they can get defensive. But I always recommend that you just prepare for the worst so that does happen. The person does get defensive. You're not caught off guard and you can maintain control of the conversation. Does that answer your question, Jasmine?
Yep, that was perfect. Thank you.
Okay. And that way you're prepared. All right. Some other little things just to help practice to increase your self-regulation skills is, time and time again, we can't stop hearing this, how important it is to practice mindfulness. Because in mindfulness, right, if it's through meditation or any other practice that you do, you are able to control ultimately your thoughts. You're able to understand them and manage them. So when you feel, when you have negative thoughts creeping in, you'll be aware of when a shift is happening because you are able to manage your thoughts. So then that way, you can then manage the emotions that are happening. So you really want to know yourself well in that way. And you can if you practice mindfulness in some way, whatever your form of practice may be, if it's through meditation, if it's other forms of mindfulness practices, the most common one does tend to be meditation, but do one, whichever works best for you. You want to be really kind to yourself. It takes work in order to work on regulating your emotions, and you're not going to get it right every time. And it is a muscle. It's a muscle that you're working on that's going to get stronger and you're going to get better at it. But be kind to yourself if you don't react in a way that you would have liked. It's okay. Hold yourself accountable. Do the process of reflecting, of understanding what was your trigger, why did you behave in that way, how would you have liked to behave, and what was the impact. And you have to address all of those questions because that's really going to help you see the big picture and understand what's important to you. And ask others for help if there is with your fellow founders, or if you have any colleagues or anything, let them know, hey, if we're having a conversation and I have to pause, if you see that I'm pausing and I'm thinking, know that I am trying to think through my emotions. I'm trying to work through my feelings. Give me about 5 or 10 seconds. So that way they know that you're working through it, and they aren't standing there like, what's going on? What is this person doing? They already know, okay, this is their practice. This is something that they do. So that's how we're asking them for help, so that we can continue to become better versions of ourselves. And that's all my information that I have, but I do want to open it up for anybody that may have any other questions or around this topic. These are the 2 next parts that we have. It was, I actually powered through that much faster than I anticipated. But the next part, we will talk about understanding other people's emotions and then how to use that to effectively manage relationships is the 4th one.
I was going to say, Gwen, thank you. I mean, that was wonderful, and I think that it's kind of nice to be through something a little fast and to get done a little bit early. It's not something that we normally do, so that's kind of cool. But I'm sure that people do have some questions, so I will let people ask those questions if they'd like. Don't forget to turn off or on your microphone if you do so.
Yes, you can unmute yourself, or you'd like to put it in the chat, whatever you are comfortable with.
Do you think it would be a good idea for everyone's first job to be in a customer service capacity to learn these skills?
I do and I don't. I think because I think of what would be of value with that is that you would be introduced to the work of service to others. And that is a formal position, right? But I don't think that it's limited to just a customer service role. I think it's easiest though to name it and to put it to a job like that. But I think anything where it would be of service to others, and for you to acknowledge and to standing leader and just really citizen in humanity.
Cool.
Thank you for asking. I think I was frozen for a second. I'm not sure.
Yeah, you were frozen for just a little bit.
Okay.
Hi. Sorry.
And then just real quick, I'm adding the survey, and if everyone could fill that out, or if you have time, just to give Gwen some feedback on her presentation today.
I'd like to ask a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, please.
Oh, what do you do in a situation where your response is not regarded as valid?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm gonna stop sharing just because it makes it a little bit easier for me. So your response is not, I'm sorry, is not considered valid?
Yes.
Could you give me a little more information?
So you're trying to get the other person's point of view, but when you give your own response, it is kind of disregarded entirely, and then the conversation keeps moving forward, but in the other person's favor, not yours.
You know, I would say it sounds like the other person doesn't have very good emotional intelligence. And you know, we are going to work with people like that, and hopefully if it's people within our company, we're able to help coach people and help them build that skill. But we are going to have people that sometimes we don't have control over who we have to work with or what their level of emotional intelligence is. I would say that when it comes to working with that other person, it would be a matter of communicating with them kind of how your opinion isn't being taken into consideration. And I think it's, and that's when it comes to giving feedback, right? And it's about the behavior. And I think you could align it also to a level of respect that it comes to in an exchange of ideas, and how if the objective is to work collaboratively, together, then the ideas have to come together, and based on the response that's given and what the end result is, you're not feeling that your thoughts are necessarily being taken into consideration. It's possible this person may not be aware that their behaviors are making you feel this way, but I think we have to give people the benefit of the doubt and give them an opportunity to improve and to change their behavior, but we have to communicate it to them, and we want to communicate it effectively. Does that help?
Thank you. Yes, it does.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Hey Gwen, I dropped something in your chat, but I'll just say it out loud.
Oh yes. Okay.
Would you please explain the difference between context and naming again, please? I'm having a hard time understanding what the different, like how to show your understanding without sounding condescending to them.
When it comes to empathy. Yes. Correct, Colton? Yes. Okay, so with naming, you just started the process of identifying that there's an emotion. Now, you don't want to tell people how they feel, because that can also be very frustrating, right? Think about it. I can think about it if I had a dress that I wanted to wear and somebody was like, oh, you probably feel, you feel upset. And I'm like, no, actually, I feel disappointed because tonight's an extra special night, right? So people tend to correct you when you identify a wrong emotion. The part that is adding the empathy and going into their perspective is just when you add the context. So it's the naming plus the context, right? So I can imagine you feel disappointed given that tonight is a special night and we're going to go out to dinner and you were excited about it. So that is the context, that is the part of the story that you're then referencing from their world. So that is the extra part that heightens the level of empathy, and it's really what makes it be from their frame of reference.
Got it.
Does anybody else have any other questions?
If not, I'd actually like to take a picture. I know I just like doing this. If anybody would like to join us and be in the picture, just turn on your camera and we can all get a photo together. And remember, we've had close to 60 people came, pretty good turnout here. So
yeah, it's a fantastic chart. I just looked at the participant number and I'm like, oh my gosh, there was